Have you checked out the Somebody You Love Patreon yet?
For just $3 a month, you can get every episode without ads and you get them a day early.
For $6 a month, you get all of our bloopers and behind-the-scenes action.
For $10 a month, you get monthly bonus episodes.
And for $20 a month, you also get the bonus episodes as videos.
You can cancel anytime, and when you sign up, you get access to everything that we've posted so far.
We also have annual subscriptions where you save 10% and get 1 month free.
Patreon.com/somebodyyoupod, as in podcast.
You do have to type in the URL because Patreon hides 18 plus creators from the search, so you most likely won't be able to find us by searching. That's patreon.com/somebodyyoupod. Welcome to Somebody You Love, or The Sale of Two Titties. I'm Jenna Love.
And I'm Holly Hart.
And we're experts in disappointing our parents, breaching community guidelines, and banging the people who vote against our rights.
Firstly, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are recording, which is the Ngunnawal people for me and the Darug and Gundungurra peoples for Jenna. We pay our respects to their elders past and present, and we acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded.
Today, Holly and I are going to share the experiences that led us to firing particular clients. As you can imagine, there might be some triggering content in there, mostly around clients crossing or attempting to cross boundaries, and there is going to be some discussion around rape within a booking context. So if you are not feeling 100% sure that you're up for hearing that sort of thing right now, it might be best to give this one a miss.
I just want to also point out that we have discussed on this show before, and you will see sex workers discuss on social media, the whole trauma porn thing and the fact that a lot of people, well, I think a lot of clients that are well-meaning and civilians as well, sometimes will ask sex workers, what's the most awful booking you've had, or, what's the worst thing that's happened? And I think what they're doing is just trying to know more about the world that we live in and some of the less glamorizing sides of it, and I appreciate that. But when you really have a look at that sort of question, you can imagine how that can be a really terrible thing to ask anybody. What's the most horrible thing that's happened in their job or in their life? And so in this episode, there are definitely, this is going to be a dark thing to say, but there are worse things that have happened to both of us that we are not putting in this episode. This episode is more about the less stark, horrendous things. That's. I feel really bad saying that. I feel it's really dark.
No, I think you are spot on, though. I think that's exactly right. We've picked.
I think these are still awful. A lot of the things we're discussing in this episode are really shitty things, and they still are treading around that border of what is consent and what is not consensual, and some of them very much overstep it. But yeah, we've definitely had experiences that were very clearly non-consensual. And that's a really horrible thing to have to talk about. We won't be discussing those today.
Yeah, no, I think you've said that perfectly. Like, these are definitely, a lot of these are real grey area situations. And I think, I don't know if you feel the same way, but the reason I'd like to share them is to make people understand where some of those grey areas are and the reason why we might fire a client or decide not to see them anymore. It's not always kind of as black and white as people might think. And, you don't need to do something that's really clearly not okay. Like you don't need to raise a hand to someone for them to decide not to see you again, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
Exactly. There's a lot more nuanced stuff. So we've just each of us have pulled out a handful of stories from different clients for whatever reason that we have seen and then decided to not see again. And we just wanted to share. Hopefully that's of interest. Yeah.
I think it's interesting, I think, for people to know that the things that aren't as, that aren't as clear cut. And I think maybe even for some listeners, it might raise some points that they hadn't thought of. They might think, oh, maybe I did that. And I might try to avoid that again. And we don't want our clients listening to every episode and going, oh, maybe I've done that. And now I'm stressing out and I can't do anything right. And I'm too overwhelmed and I don't want to see sex workers anymore because I'm stressing about everything I do. It's not that. It's not that you can't make jokes in woke society sort of scenario where you have to overreact to everything. It's maybe just raising a little bit of awareness as always, and hopefully having a little bit of a laugh and and destigmatizing some of the work, but also painting a realistic picture of the work that we do.
Yeah, look, we can't say it enough. One of the unexpected, somewhat negative outcomes of this show, of this podcast, something I totally wasn't expecting to happen, has been the sheer amount of clients that have expressed fear of being a story in a future episode, fear of having done something we've talked about in a negative way. And we just have to keep repeating it. If we're still seeing you as a client, then
you're okay. Yeah.
Then you're okay. And we probably are really enjoying and looking forward to seeing you. Like that's particularly, Holly and I are very lucky and we have a lot of options about who we choose to see and who we don't, as you'll see in this episode. So please.
And these are the exceptions. These are the like 1 in hundreds.
Yeah. All right. Let's tell some stories.
Sorry for that massive bit at the start. I just feel like this sort of episode does need a lot of
It's
work.
tricky.
It's tricky. Like Run DMC.
That's the reference I was going for.
You are so cool. We should be friends.
Okay.
All right, we're starting off with my beautiful client. I want to give them all little names, but I'm really bad at thinking of names. But we're gonna go with my beautiful client, Kevin.
Okay.
Not his real name, but
Kevin, we won't say any real
names. None
names
of these
here,
will
course.
be real names.
Yeah.
So darling Kevin saw me for years. I thought he was really lovely, really attractive. I really enjoyed our sessions together. Everything was just really pleasant. So as my prices increased from my very low starting rate upon entering the private side of the industry to whatever point I ended up cutting him off, I did not pass on that price increase, which in the industry and in a few industries is called grandfathering. So I grandfathered that rate for him. I was always very accommodating, as I think I am with a lot of my favourite clients. Some bookings would run a little bit over time. I'd squeeze him in wherever I could, really took care of him and did the best by him. Unfortunately, look, it was a silly thing. It just was one day he had a booking and he texted me and I think he said, I want to go to a sport thing instead and I'm not coming. And I have lots of room for cancellations. That's fine. Like if things happen in your life and it's genuinely unavoidable, fine. But in this instance, it was sort of a real fuck you. And I had gotten ready and I was waiting and I was all cute. And it was like, I'm going to go and play sport. And I was like, okay, whatever. So then he wanted to book in with me a few weeks later. And I said like, hey, Kevin, no worries. I'd love to see you. I will need a $50 cancellation fee just for last time, just to, compensate for the loss of income and me getting ready for you and you not showing up. That'd be really nice. And look, to be fair, I didn't have a cancellation policy at the time. I had not advised him of this. I didn't have a deposit thing. All of those things, fine, fair. But I thought, look, I've taken care of this client. I've charged him less than my rate for years. I don't think that's too much to ask for. Well, he came back, didn't he? He was, oh, well, you didn't tell me that's the thing I'd have to do. If I knew that, I wouldn't have cancelled. Well, so you don't want to be out $50, but you don't care if you affected me. That's what's the big deal here. And it's $50. In the scheme of things, it's a token, it's a gesture. I wasn't asking you to pay my bills for a week.
And he'd been paying
significantly less
for months than $50 less than you. Like he'd been saving well over that.
Hundreds of dollars, yeah. Exactly. It was a very tokenistic thing. Wasn't a penalty, wasn't a punishment. It was just I wanted him just to give me a little symbol of, sorry, I stuffed you around. And like I said, for the time and effort I'd put in and put aside for him. And so it wasn't even that he wouldn't pay the $50. I don't care about the $50. It was the fact that it was the disrespect and the lack of mutual care that he showed me. So I refused to take bookings from him anymore. And he didn't come back. He did try to book again, but he did not ever agree to the $50. I put my foot down and he would try to book and he'd go, oh, hey, and I was like, well, if you pay the cancellation fee, I'll consider it. And he, oh no. Like, well, that's fine. I can just see
just wouldn't for that.
The total lack of respect. Yeah. And it was a shame because we got on really well. Loved him as a client. And anyone could say I cut off my nose to spite my face, and that's the privilege I have, is to do that. But yeah, I just thought, oh man, if you don't even care about me enough to show that symbolic thing after I have showed a really symbolic care for you by not increasing my rates for years, then yeah, what's the point?
So my first story is somebody who tried to get away without paying me. Which
that's a massive escalation on my story.
It is.
That is like,
It
whoa.
is. The reason it's not too bad is because I did end up getting the money. But obviously I won't be seeing this client again. The funny part is that he keeps trying to book me, which I just find so fucking baffling. Like he tried to steal from me and he had his booking with me and then tried to not pay. And I had agreed to have sex with him on the basis of him paying me. So he tried to get away with raping me. And
Yes.
I cannot believe that somebody would then think that I would want to see him again. Anyway, so it was our second booking. First booking had been fine. And then now you'll hear a lot in the industry, people saying you have to take payment up front. And, that's a good rule of thumb. For me, when I've seen someone before and I've had no issues with them, I become a bit more relaxed with it. And I know I've told stories like this before and I've had other workers say, you've got to always take money up front. And that's fine.
Yep.
True. It's a good point. But, I run my business how I want to run my business. And in over 10 years of this is the only time it's happened to me. And I'm lucky about that, right? So we got to the end of the booking and I was like, okay, do you want to pay me? And this client, so I was on tour at the time, and the client said, oh no, I paid you at the beginning. And at that point, we were already like pushing it over time because he was difficult to get out of the room. He also had a disability, which did make our communication perhaps a little bit more difficult than it is with other clients. So that was a factor. And I was like, oh, okay, and just let him go. Now, again, I can hear people screaming at me saying, well, you shouldn't have let him go. But I'm a big fan of the old de-escalation, a big fan of if somebody's trying not to pay me, then I don't want them in the room with me anymore, to be honest. Like that's, I'm very privileged saying this, but I'll wear the $500 or whatever it is to make sure I'm not in a situation with somebody who.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that might endanger you. Sure.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was like, I've got the text messages here.
And you had a moment too, didn't you, of like, oh, maybe he did. Did I have a moment?
Oh, yeah,
Was
of
that correct?
course.
Or-
Yeah. I thought, oh, fuck, especially when I'm on tour, I'm seeing a lot of
Yeah.
people. I thought, oh, maybe it was him that paid. Maybe
Yeah.
I've, whatever.
don't want to stand there and interrogate him when you just wanted to double check. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, he left and I went to look where I would have put the payment if he had paid me, and couldn't see any. And this whole time I was questioning myself. I was going, oh, have I? Maybe, And so I sent him a text saying, hi, I don't think you did pay me. And this was, I think he was still in the building. Can you please just double check your wallet for me? Because at this point I'm like, benefit of the doubt,
Totally. That's, yeah.
He came back with.
I've had clients where it's happened accidentally. Yeah. And they've gone, shit.
Yes. Absolutely, yeah. I've had that happen plenty of times and we've both been like, oh my God, we're idiots. And, he came back and said, yes, there's no money in it. Do you want to check my wallet? And I said, no, that's okay. He said, I'm outside the door. Are you sure? And again, at this point, I'm going, I don't want him back in. Like, I'm going, right. So if he hasn't paid me, he's telling me I can double check there's no money in his wallet. That means he never intended to pay.
Yeah.
Because if there's no money in that wallet, it hasn't gone to me, so I know there was never any there to start with. So I don't want this person in the same room as me. He said, are you sure? I said, well, it wouldn't prove anything anyway, because it doesn't prove anything. He said, okay, do you want me to go now? I said, yes, please. He said, okay, are you sure? I said, well, look, I don't think you paid me, but if you're not going to, then there's not much I can do about it right now. And he said, okay, just double check when you're finished your tour. I don't want to get in trouble from something. And
No,
I thought, well,
that
there's
says it
something
all.
to get in trouble from, don't you?
Yeah.
And I said, I will. He said, okay, just let me know. Thanks. I finished off the tour. And when I got home, then I'd packed up the room and double checked that there was absolutely no chance of it being anywhere. I went through the series of events in my head to clarify and was like, no,
Yep.
he definitely didn't pay me. And now reading over, it's all becoming very clear that he was intending to not pay me. So I got home. I did up an invoice and I sent, a strongly worded letter with the assistance of Google, and then he got back and that's right, I sent it to his work email address. I obviously was able to find out where he worked and his dad's name, and dropped some nice threatening mentions of those things in there. And then he got back to me and said, I can pay half of it now and half next week. And I was like, that's fine. And that's exactly what happened. So thankfully, I got the money in the end. But he keeps trying to book me. And I just think that's fucking insane. Isn't that insane?
Like, the fact that he immediately agreed and paid the money means that he knew damn
100%.
well what he'd done.
Yep.
You know, if he had put his foot down, which wouldn't have been any better, but if he had continued to argue that I swear that I have paid that money, then, you might have thought, oh, maybe he just genuinely is confused about this. But the fact that he immediately paid it, which is great, I'm glad he paid it, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It and that he didn't double down on his lie. But yeah, it says to me that he knew. And
then the fact that he had to pay it in installments.
Yeah.
I mean, that means you didn't have the money a couple of days ago to pay me for the book. Like he fully turned up knowing he didn't have the money and couldn't afford to pay.
Yeah.
It's so disgusting.
And if he got home and realised, oh, fuck, I had made whatever mistake and had reached out to you and said, oh, Jenna, I just realised I took the cash out and I left it on my drawer at home or whatever, fine, fuck, like it's a bit annoying, but things happen and you'd understand. But he waited until you chased him up and now he's like, oh, let's fuck again.
Yeah. Like for obvious reasons, I don't want your penis fucking anywhere near me. Obviously. Like.
Yeah, really cooked.
Yeah.
I had one client I only saw once and once was enough. It's not a big offense. Probably going to listen to this and be like, but it's just rude. This dude turned up. The booking itself was like fine, neither here nor there, but he just kept negging my house. Like it was when I was living in the other house, so the last home that I was in was very run down and shitty. But that doesn't friggin' matter. Like he just had all these little comments about like, I can't even remember now, but it was like, oh, this isn't very nice, is it? Or, oh, what's like with that? And I was like, this is not making me feel horny. Maybe my house isn't making you feel horny, but if it's not, book somewhere else then. You go book yourself a 5-star hotel and I'll come visit you and fine. If you want to be in some sort of luxury. And also, like he sold me when I was a very low price. Like it was, I wasn't charging a rate that was worth the, I don't know, what's the Palazzo Versace. Like it wasn't a 5-star price. So it was going to be in a woman's pretty humble residential home and the room was clean and furnished and fresh and maybe the house was 50 60 years old, but yeah, it was just really bizarre. And then he inquired to book with me again and I just thought like I have no interest. I don't know if that works for some dudes. I don't know if that's just like awkward people trying to make conversation, but it was such a turn off.
I had a similar one, and again, I was going to say the same thing because it was many years ago and I was not charging very much money, and it was while I was on tour in Sydney, and anyone who knows anything about Sydney knows that it's fucking expensive. And the place that I was staying in was an Airbnb, and I had picked somewhere that was like, it was quite kitschy, like it was the design was very cute and colourful. That's what I like. I hate staying in white hotel rooms with white bedding and, it's just super not my style. I like something with a bit of character. So the place I booked had character. And it was not like, I thought it was quite nice, to be honest. But yeah, it wasn't like a fancy upper scale hotel or whatever. Upscale. That's the word I'm looking for, isn't it? Upper class / upscale. One of those. Upscale. It wasn't fancy. But I thought it was quite nice. And it was clean. It was in good shape. And this guy, I just spent the whole time talking about how like the decor wasn't very nice and, I could have booked a better place. And yeah, I was like, you're not paying me very much. Like, you're not paying me enough to cover a night here. Yes. So the
logic is bizarre.
Very, very unattractive. Yeah, very unsexy. Like I just felt like shit. And I kept thinking like, why don't you go and book someone that charges $1,000 an hour then? Because they can probably afford a better place. Like I don't know why you're complaining about budget decor at your budget rates.
Yeah, but exactly.
I have one where I only had one booking with this person, and the booking itself was not a problem at all. But the problem was that so the booking happened during a tour, and while I was on tour, they had sent me a couple of emails following up after the booking to try and make another one. Now, I really struggle to keep on top of my admin when I'm on tour. I know that this is a fault of my own, but I do. And then by the time I got home and had sat down and been able to look at my emails, I had 3 or 4 emails, I think. And then in the following, and this is, it's all, I understand, I totally take blame in this, that I hadn't got back to the person. But then I had Twitter DMs, I had Instagram DMs, I had comments from them. And I think it was something like there were 17 messages of some form, or text messages, I guess, was the other one.
Wow.
There was 17 in the space of less than a week, and it just completely spun me out. I just couldn't handle it. And I, as I said, I understand that that's a big part of that. That person, I don't know, did they do something wrong? I think it's a real gray area, because I know that all could have been avoided had I responded to one of their initial messages. But it just made me feel so overwhelmed and so trapped.
I get the same thing.
Yeah. And I've had it happen with a few people that have just sent me so much contact. And to be clear, if you send me an email and I don't respond and you send a follow-up saying, hey, just checking you got this, that's fine. That is not what I'm talking about. But this was 17 pieces of contact in under a week. It was a lot. And I just couldn't deal with it. So I've never seen that person again. And they could have been, as I said, the booking itself was fine, but I just couldn't handle all the rest of it.
Yes, I'm definitely familiar with that one. I don't do it often, but when I do, it takes me a year. It takes me so long to get my head around writing a message back, because I don't know where to begin. It just overwhelms me.
Overwhelming. Yeah. Well, I don't. It doesn't take me a year. You
just never do it.
No. At that point, it's all over for me.
I saw, this is another once and done client. I'm going to call him Marcus. Darling Marcus, he was a nutcase from the moment he walked through the door. Look, all of his screening and comms were lovely. He seemed fine. He turned up and it was just on. He was so anxious and nervous and paranoid. I'm going to say paranoid is the right thing, because anxious and nervous we see all the time. But
absolutely.
This dude was obsessed with the idea that someone might be watching. And so he kept getting up and pulling the blinds. So at my old place, the window was behind the bed. So the bed was pressed up against the curtains, and it was really fiddly to open the curtains because the bed head was pressed against it. But he's there standing up, pulling back the curtains and the blind, looking through and looking at all the other houses, and then coming around the other side of the bed and pulling the curtains and having a look on the other side. And he's like, oh, I think the neighbours are out the front in their yard. And I'm like, yeah, they might be. And he's like, oh, but what if they hear us? What if they can tell what's going on in here? And I'm like, well, that's fine, because we're 2 adults and we are doing something consensual and not illegal. I'm not sure what the issue is. And he's like, oh, we just, be very quiet because they might. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy. Anyway, it went like that. It was the most unsexy booking, because that was the whole thing. We'd have to keep stopping in the middle of what we were doing so he could get up and look out the windows again. Exhausting. I think it was only a half-hour booking.
Oh my God, of course.
Yeah. And when it was, oh, that's right. And then the whole way through, he kept being like, do you have a chair? I don't have a chair. I don't have a dinner setting. I don't have an outdoor setting. I didn't have it then. I eat dinner on my couch, at my coffee table, single life. People who are not single do that too. That's fine. It's fine. It's not,
Yep,
but,
I also do that.
Yeah. It's, so I didn't have a chair. I do now. I realised the other day, I was telling somebody else that I don't have a chair, but I do now. I have an office chair at one of my desks, so that's, don't. Anyway, he was obsessed with it, and he kept asking me, and I had to keep saying to him, I don't, do you think if you asked me the 5th time, I'm going to go, ha, it was a trick. You have worked out my ruse. Here is the magical chair you asked for. I don't know what the point was in continuing to ask. It was like he didn't believe me, Anyway, so we finished the booking, we get organised, and I'm thinking, get this man the fuck out of my house. I can't deal with him. We get out to near the front, and he goes, oh, I've forgotten my watch. It's in the bathroom. And I was like, oh, of course, if I can have. All right, hang on, I'll go get it. So I go down the hall, find the watch. he genuinely had forgotten. I come back up the hallway and he's in my fucking kitchen, which in the layout of that house, you had to go walking. Like, he went for a wander through my house. And I was like, are you okay? And he's like, oh, yeah, just looking. And I was like, oh, don't just fucking look. But I guarantee he was looking to see if I was lying about chairs. He was looking to see if I had hidden some chairs so he couldn't have the best booking with a chair. Like, I don't know. It was a conspiracy against him that I hid all the chairs and that I lied. Anyway, so the next time he inquired for a booking, oh my God, guys, it gets better. It gets so much better. He inquired for a booking about a year or two later. I just love this story so much. It was, do you know what? I want to see if I could find it. Hang on.
While you're looking for it, I'm just going to say, what is the chair situation? Because I've had multiple clients ask for a chair and be perplexed that A, I don't own one. Because same as you, I actually do have a dining table, but it's got a big long benches. Like there's not a chair there. And actually now I do have an office chair, but I'm not going to go and wheel that out of my office and bring it into the bedroom. It wouldn't even fit in the bedroom, to be honest. And when I've been on tour and stuff, there just isn't always a chair. Like, and I just don't know how. I've been asked multiple times for a chair, and every time they've been perplexed and like really disappointed that I don't have a chair. And I'm like, I don't know why you need a chair. Like, anyway, that's all.
They get
what the fuck?
Really fixated on this chair thing, don't they?
Very strange.
It is hilarious.
And what if they want us to have sex on it? I'm going to break it. Like both of our weight together, that's not a good idea. And if they want me to do like a lap dance, that's not a good idea because I'll look like a fucking idiot. So I don't even know why they want it.
Yes. Yeah, it's a silly fantasy. I almost certainly don't have any of these messages. Anyway, I'm just looking at my notes. Don't even bother seeing again. Absolute nuisance. Whinged about everything. Do you have a chair? Can we use a different room? Stand up, sit down. No noise. The neighbours are there. I can see a woman. Anyway, that's my notes. Beautiful. So he messaged me about a year or two later and he was like, hi, I would like to make a booking. And I was like, Jesus Christ, help me. No. I said, I'm so sorry. I don't think we're a good match. Last time you were just exhausting. Good luck finding somebody else. I don't even know if I elaborated at all, but that was it. And he wrote back and said, I am not Marcus. My name is Brett, and I've been given this work phone, and I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, oh, yeah, how convenient that two guys from the same business who have been given the same work phone have contacted the same sex worker. Like, the odds are just so slim. It's definitely possible, but it's very unlikely.
Very
incredibly
improbable.
Unlikely, especially within a gap of like a year. And I was like, why are you lying? I was like, this is the weirdest thing to lie about. I said, I know it's you, and if you turn up for a booking, it's going to be freaking weird because I've told you no. And he's like, I'm so confused. You totally have me wrong. I'm definitely not that guy. I'm like, I can't believe you're persisting with this lie. It went on for some messages.
You should have just sent him a photo of a chair.
Oh my God, it's so good.
Like, I found a chair for you.
Yeah, it's your chair. Yeah, so it doesn't need to be said, but that was the end of that.
All right, I've got a couple of gross ones. And again, these are situations that I could have dealt with by being an adult and having a conversation with them. But instead, I just couldn't handle it and ran away and have never seen them again. So the first one is somebody that I saw was kind of a regular. I saw them quite a few times. And then this one time, so they were laying on their back and they had me giving them like a hand job, and then they had I knew that they enjoyed like a finger in the bum, and they kind of suggested that I do that. Yeah, this is gross. Skip ahead if you're not up for the gross factor. And so I put my hand under their butt, like went to the position to do that. And, I feel sick talking about it again. And there was poo there, but I'm not talking like occasionally you might see like somebody hasn't wiped properly, or like sometimes there's a bit of like poo debris. This was like just full on like poop in the butt crack.
Hanging out there. Yeah.
Full on poo. Like it was, oh my God. And I like didn't know what to do. And I didn't put my finger in there, obviously. I like pulled it away but I ended up, I got them to come fairly soon after. So that was fine. And then like they got up and left and declined to have a shower on the way out. So that's nice for them. And I just, from that point on, ghosted them because I just couldn't handle it. And again, I could have said, hey, you might want to look at this. I could have talked to them a bit about hygiene. I could have explained some things. I could have said, look, I just need you to make sure you've sorted this out before next time. But I couldn't. I just couldn't deal with it. And so I've literally never spoken to that person again. And I know that they were really upset about that. But
sometimes you're just in the moment and you just like, you're like, am I going to give myself more work to do today by having to have this uncomfortable, or can I just get them to finish and go away and never see them again? That sounds like awful.
And the thought of having sex with this person again makes me feel ill because I just associate it with that feeling of that poo, which I'm never going to forget.
Yeah.
And then I have another one. Like, we all know smegma is the most horrible thing that is on this planet. And what Holly may not know, because while she knows it's disgusting, she doesn't have to smell it.
I have never smelt smegma. Lucky me.
And that you are fucking lucky, babe. So I've dealt with smegma plenty of times. It's fucking gross. But at times I can handle it.
It's always very unpleasant. And just for those listening who aren't aware what smegma is, because there are probably a lot of people who don't know, it's a very sex work educated word to know. Does that make sense? No. Anyway, you learn it as part of sex work. Point of the story is
it's dick cheese.
You can just, it's dick cheese. You can cut all my rambling out. It basically, when somebody, a penis owner, pulls their foreskin back, there can be a build-up underneath. And particularly for people who aren't pulling their foreskin back regularly, or they're not pulling it back when they're washing it, there can be a build-up of all sorts of oils, skin, dead skin cells, a little bit of urine, whatever other things are in that area can gather and create a real concoction.
And it can happen with vulvas as well.
It can indeed. It doesn't. It seems to happen less in my experience from what I've
Same.
observed.
Yeah.
But
I think the foreskin really gets in the way.
It really holds
That's
it in there.
thing.
Yeah. I love foreskins. Don't get us wrong.
Oh, me too. But
yeah.
foreskins that have not been pulled back regularly and cleaned under are my worst nightmare.
Yeah.
So, look, I've dealt with it before, but this particular one was a guy I'd seen a few times. And the last time I saw him, like, I was bowled over by the smell.
Wow.
It was so gross and so, I don't even, it was just so gross. And, like, I was going to go down on him and then was like, okay, obviously I'm not doing that. I put some gloves on and gave him a hand job. And again, thankfully he came quite quickly, but the cum, like, there was smegma. My God, it was so disgusting.
Oh my God, that's
and
horrible.
again, have just ghosted him ever since. Can't handle it. I just can't. I'm so grossed out by it. And that's just, yep. I've also had a couple, actually, I'm thinking about all the gross ones. I've had a couple, like, I really struggle with smelly clients. And again, Holly doesn't know what this is like, but I really struggle. And I've had a couple that stink up my room. And after they leave, I have to open all the windows, I have to spray stuff, and I can smell them for hours afterwards. And it's just, that's out of control. You can't be doing that. Just, come on, use soap, for fuck's sake. Yeah.
I had another one and done. Mick, he turned up for a booking and seemed really nice. Actually, we had chatted a fair bit on Twitter before we had a booking, and I thought we were really cool. He turned up, he was fine, nothing remarkable about him at first glance, but he went to kiss me at one point and his tongue was thick, white, covered with, like, I don't know if it was like a, what do you call it, like a mouth disease or a dehydration thing, or just that he needed a good old tongue scraper or whatever. But it was thick, white, and I just couldn't. I avoided the kissing as much as I could. That how much of that is his fault? How do you communicate that with someone? Oh, your tongue's fucking gross. What's wrong with it? Okay, obviously more tactfully than that, but it's a hard thing to bring up to somebody. Whoa, like, your mouth is
that
ill.
About? Yeah.
How do you say it? And I can't imagine it smelled good. Like, anyway. everyone, look, I mean, again, I don't have a sense of smell, but I figure we all get bad breath from time to time. I bet there's clients that I've seen who've been like, oh, Holly's breath's not ideal today. That's okay, but if your mouth looks like you haven't brushed your teeth in 15 years, I'm going to feel a little confronted. Yeah. So then we got down to business, and we were still sort of just easing into things and barely had begun. And he pulled his arm right back and belted me across the bare ass so hard that my eyes immediately watered. And I can handle a fair hard spank.
Yeah, can confirm.
I definitely, spanking is not an issue for me. But this, straight away my eyes watered and I lost my breath. I was winded. It took me a second to go, and I was like, fuck, what the fuck was that? I turned around and I started yelling because I was like, what? And he goes, sorry. And I was like, you can't just hit somebody that hard. You didn't ask me if I wanted to be spanked. You didn't warm me up in any way to build up to it. I was just shocked. And there was a real strong instinct from me at that point to say, leave. That was so inappropriate. I think because we'd built the rapport and we were X amount already into it, that I just was like, do you know what? Just be polite and we'll just get it over and done with now. And we did, and he left, and I then had more time to process it. Because in those moments when you're with a client, you have to make those decisions very quickly.
Yeah.
And obviously at any point I could have stopped and said, do you know what, I've thought now and I'm not comfortable. But it was fine. I wasn't traumatized. I got through the booking and it was not an issue. But after he left, I thought about it and I was like, that was just so inappropriate. And it's not that I'm frightened that he'll do it again.
Straight up assault.
It was really unpleasant. People. And I was not comfortable to see him again. So
yeah, clearly. Yeah. I think the discussion's quite important about how you do have to make those decisions quickly, and you do have to choose what you think maybe will be the path of least resistance or the safest path for you. And you would have absolutely been within your right to have kicked him out at that moment because he just fucking straight up hit you.
Yeah.
But I think it's also I think your reaction was also I don't think you did anything wrong in that.
No, I think it's a pretty normal thing that a lot of sex workers do is go, oh damn, that was not something I'm comfortable with, but we're here and I can manage this right now.
I take a lot of power in those moments of going, cool, I'm never going to see you again. And that alone, I don't know, maybe that seems like not much, but for me, that makes me really go, cool, well, I've made that decision. That's great. I'm never going to have to cross paths with you again. And that makes me feel good.
Fair enough.
So I've got a one and done too. This was a client who he just kept trying to rub his bare dick on my vulva, which is, what do you call it? Frottage. I've always said frottage, but I discovered on this podcast that it's frottage. Yeah, so he just kept trying to do that, and I kept pushing it out of the way and moving my hips out of the way, the old fucking do-si-do that I'm sure every sex worker knows.
Do-si-do!
It is.
So true, isn't it? The do-si-do.
You all know the dance. Anyone who's listening who's a sex worker, you know the dance. I was doing it hardcore. And I just kept pushing it away or quickly reaching my hand down in between, and then and this is I've experienced that a number of times, that wasn't the most, it's not okay, it's fucked, that's so not okay, you can't be doing that to people, but I've dealt with it before. And then he wanted to have anal sex, which is totally fine, that was cool, so I agreed to that, but he didn't want to use lube, which is, I don't know, how many brain cells do you have? That's just literally absurd. I don't even...
I've had a number of clients be like, can we just not use lube for normal sex? And I'm like, what? In what world? And they're like, it's more friction. And I'm like, friction is not desirable. And so what do you mean? Let alone anal. My God, I cannot imagine anything in my bum without lube. And me, I'm very conservative with my bum. The thought is horrifying.
But to the point where... He in doggy style, and I reached out to get the lube, and he hid it out of my hand.
Oh wow!
Anyway, I eventually I was no, and I eventually grabbed it, and so he didn't force it without lube. But what the fuck? What's wrong with you? Cool. So the part about this that was wild, and the part which I during the booking was like, cool, never seeing you again. And now by the end of the booking, I'm pretty sure he felt the same way about me. Because this thing that was really out of character for me happened where he sat down, was putting his shoes on, and he started doing small talk, and he whipped out that favorite old question. He was like, have you ever had, any bad clients?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, of course. And this is the thing. I usually don't say anything. I usually am just like, cool, never seen you again.
Yeah.
But if I'm asked directly, then I'm really bad at, like, I don't know. I get this rush of adrenaline and I'm like, well, fuck, here we go. And he said, have you ever any bad clients? And I said, yeah, of course. And he was like, well, like what kind of thing makes a bad client? And I said, pushing boundaries. And he's like, what do you mean by pushing boundaries? And I said, well, like you just did. And his face, like he was like, what? And I was like, well, you know how you kept trying to rub your dick on me without a condom? And he was like, no, like, and I said, and how you wanted to have anal without any lube, and like you literally hit the bottle out of my hand. And he was like, what do you, I didn't mean it. Like just all that shit.
Yeah.
And, so then I was like, anyway, bye.
Yeah.
Which is just, as you know, so out of character for me. But I was like,
very
well,
out of character.
If you want to know, like, this is what, I don't know, it really upsets me because it's so often, like, the fact that he was like, oh, I wonder if you've ever had any bad experiences. And I was like, you're ticking all the boxes, hun.
Yes.
Like, what do you mean? You tried to force me to do a bunch of things that were really inappropriate and clearly not allowed, and I made it really clear I wasn't comfortable with them, and you kept trying. Like, what part of your brain thinks I'm one of the good guys?
Well, yeah, and I think that's probably why he was asking you what the bad experiences were, so he could convince himself that he's not one of the bad guys. He wants to hear of people who do really bad things because he doesn't think that what he is doing is bad.
Was that bad.
Well, got to break it to you, buddy, but you are very in that zone.
Yep. Yeah. And he has not attempted to book me so far, which is reasonable. And I'm happy about
Excellent.
That. So good.
Love it.
Who misses free and affordable ads without all the anti-sex rhetoric?
Assembly 4 is a team of sex workers and technologists based out of Naarm, Australia, who have a specialised understanding of the complex challenges workers face and are dedicated to providing solutions to amplify their voices.
Assembly 4 was founded on the belief that impact is more important than profit. They strongly believe that having the ability to make decisions about our bodies and sexual lives is a fundamental human right. Anyone should be able to make these choices without fear, violence, or discrimination. Sex workers are still fighting for this right.
Tryst.link is a directory that lists thousands of independent adult entertainers, escorts, BDSM, kink, video, massage, and much more. They also have a huge amount of educational resources and blog posts about the sex industry that are well worth a look.
Check out their website assembly4.com, that's for the word, not the number, for more info.
A few years ago, it was midsummer, and I posted on Twitter something about the heat and something about lying in front of the air conditioner all day. Gosh, this was at the time when I only had one bed in my house, so I was working and sleeping in the same bedroom, and so the air conditioner was the same one, that I slept in front of and that my clients saw. Someone commented on that post and said, "Oh, that air conditioner in your room is so great. I can't wait to use it again," and blah, blah, blah. Whatever. It's just something, that clients comment, cute, fine, whatever. So I sent him a DM and I was like, oh my God, you're one of, and just to also point out, this was at a point where I was still reasonably new to Twitter. I think I'd only been on there, less than a year, or been really engaged with it for less than a year. And so identifying some of my clients at that point was really exciting, and it still is. It's still really lovely when I work out that somebody's one of my clients and I'm like, oh, it just feels cool.
I love it.
So yeah, it's really nice. It's nice that we have that little, extra sort of bond. So I sent him a DM and I said, hey, oh my gosh, I didn't realize you were one of my clients. It's so lovely. Who are you? He replied and said, look, I'd really like to remain anonymous. My privacy is very important. I'm sure you understand. And I was like, Are you fucking kidding? Then why the fuck are you interacting with my tweets?
Then fuck right off.
Right? Piss off. And I said, I did write back to him and I said, well, no, I don't think that is appropriate. And I'm sure you understand that I'm going to block you right now. And I was pissed. Anyway, the idiot didn't realize that like a month or two after that, he uploaded one of his like sports score things from some sort of app and it showed all of his details. And so I was immediately able to block him from my phone and never see him again. I don't know if he tried to contact me because he was blocked on every avenue possible. I just thought it was so gross. Like, that's fine. You can have your privacy on Twitter. You can like my post on it, but don't say things that you've been inside my house.
Yes.
If you're not going to tell me who you are. That's so creepy.
What and what do you mean? Like, you've met him, you've had sex with him, but he wants to keep his privacy?
I wasn't going to post his details on Twitter and go, this is my client,
I
Jimothy.
guess that's what he thinks.
No, who knows?
Oh, so yuck.
Yeah.
Speaking of keeping our privacy, something that a lot of sex workers know and have a lot of experience with is that it's really fucking hard to keep our personal information private. The world we live in really just doesn't value privacy, and it's really, really difficult. And a lot of us have been through, filling out all sorts of forms, talking with lawyers, talking with people from the government, trying to get protection for things. And there aren't that many options out there, and it's fucking bullshit. And it can't be only sex workers who are affected by it. And I'd love for that to change, and I hope that some stuff happens with that at some point. But at the moment, the reality is we can do all the right things, and still there are ways that our legal name can get out there and people can find it out. And that's fine. The problem is when people go looking for it. Mm-hmm. So I had this client who was perfectly nice, but he said to me like, oh, it's not that hard to find out your real name. I just Googled blah, blah, blah and blah, blah, blah. And then said, and I've been meaning to ask, how is blah, 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 something relevant to my personal life. And I felt so fucking violated because it's not about, I know it's not hard to find out my name. Thanks for the reminder of the fear that I deal with every fucking day of my life. Like, I know, and I've done literally everything I can to try and protect my identity and the identity of my family. And yet the world that we live in doesn't allow me to. And for you to throw that in my face and be like, oh, it's actually not that hard. Like, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
All you're doing is reminding me of the stigma I face and the danger that I'm in just because of that stigma. And then for you to go and be like, oh, by the way, I was going to ask how blah, blah is. Like, fuck you.
It's really upsetting, isn't it?
It's so upsetting. And just, I think it was just one of those things where, like, this is a client who is very active in reads about sex work, engages with a lot of sex workers on social media, and I think would consider themselves really, a good client and someone who knows what they're doing, and who wouldn't make mistakes like this. But to me, I was like, well, you, A, went looking for my name, then told me you did that, and then pulled like a weird power play of referencing something that only people in my personal life know about. Like, how
really really bad.
It's so not okay.
Like, that's one of the worst things you can do as a client. Like,
yes.
That's in my top 5.
Absolutely.
Pretty
and
bad.
To be clear, again, I have had clients, especially back in the early days when my security was not as strong, who said to me, hey, I don't know how to bring this up, but you got recommended to me as a friend request on Facebook and I saw your name, but I didn't, that's fine. When it happens accidentally, that's okay.
We live in a digital
and it does
age.
happen.
And technology
Absolutely.
and these things sometimes, we've got social media here and there, things happen. And a lot of us as sex workers, we have fake names on things and we do all we can to mitigate those risks. But sometimes shit happens. And if you genuinely didn't mean to bump into it and then you come and you say, I wasn't stalking you, get it. Yeah,
it's all good.
Fine.
It happens and we appreciate the heads up, to be honest.
Sure.
But when you go looking for it and then you try to act as though you're invested in something in my personal life, it's absolutely violating. So disgusting.
My final cancelled client for the day. So this guy, This guy is one of my worst clients who wasn't actually a criminal, as far as I'm concerned, if that makes sense. This is someone who I couldn't quite say that they did anything illegal or that they did anything that was a crime, but goddamn, they were
get close.
They were on that line.
Yeah. And they are, no, I shouldn't say they're the worst kind of people, but that's where it makes it really difficult, right?
Well, this one was insidious. This individual started off as a lovely client and then things escalated in such a way, like an abusive relationship, in such a way that I didn't even realize they were happening until it was so far gone. And then I tried to end the client-provider relationship and it just spiraled and it became a whole ordeal.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to disclose any more than that, but I think anyone listening can probably gather the extremes that you need to go to when a client will not leave you alone. And that's where we ended up. So not a good time. I'm just going to drop a few little bits and pieces here, but there were so many more. Like, these are little tiny tidbits, and you can imagine that this is part of a massive Lord of the Rings trilogy-sized stack of events. Like, it was huge. So it started with little things. Once they sent me orchids and I said, oh, thanks so much for the lovely bunch of flowers. And they wrote back and said, look, if you could just confirm for me, because what I ordered was some orchids. Can you tell me whether they were orchids or flowers? And I was like, oh, well, they're orchids. Yeah, that's lovely. But it wasn't, he wasn't really confirming. It was part of his little pedantic dance that went on for the continuing relationship.
That is a bunch of flowers. What?
I know. No, it had to be orchids. So it had to be an arrangement of orchids is what he wanted to hear. Anyway, I once had this top that I put in a picture on Twitter and he was like, oh, can you wear that top that you posted yesterday? And I was like, well, I can't. And the story was that it was in the wash at the time, I think. Yeah, I hadn't washed it yet. My laundry was, not done. Yeah. And he was like, why? What happened? Did a client that was too overenthusiastic rip it or something? And I was like, it doesn't fucking matter. It's not your business. He started to get really controlling.
Yeah. And just that, it's always, the jumping to a client being violent with us is always weird and sus.
It's so gross. He would always talk about the other workers in the industry and he'd be like, oh, you and your sisters, you all have things, don't you? Oh, you and your sisters, you're all up to some. And I'm like, my sisters, what do you mean? I don't know. It was like he thought we were some sort of conspiratorial cult. He'd be like, you and your sisters are plotting things. So you all talked about this sort of, like, what? My sisters? Like, they're women who are sex workers, not a little convent. We're not, I don't know what he had in his mind.
And they're not all women even, so fuck off.
Very good point. Very far from all women. That's correct. He then messaged me at some point during the relationship and he was like, when I say relationship, keeping in mind, I mean client-provider relationship. Yep. I don't mean, but I don't know if he thought it was going another way. And I don't want to disparage anyone, but this is like the last person in the world I would date. Like, I would literally date Jordan Peterson before I would date this guy. Like, he was so... he must have known that we were not aligned in any sort of way. Like, for you got to be realistic when you're dating. And, like, we were just not compatible. Like, it would have been very weird. That it might seem cruel. You're probably picturing certain things about him, but it was just him. He was just we were not compatible. Like, as people. Client and service provider, fine. But yeah, not to date. Anyway, I digress. He sent me a message at some point during all of this and was like, look, you always call me darling or dear in bookings. I would really like you from now on to start using my name, and I'd like you to always refer to me as this name during the bookings. And I'd like to hear it because when you say my name, it means respect. And and I was like, that's really weird. I was like, that's weird. I just say darling because it's comfortable and it's affectionate and terms of endearment are comfortable for me. And I was like, and he's like, I really just want you to say my name. Fine, I'll fucking say your name, whatever. Like, it was just really pedantic again. Then he started
so formal, though.
It was so weird.
I don't know how that shows respect.
If I went through, this could be a whole episode on its own, but I'm just rapid firing.
Sorry,
these.
I'll let you keep going.
No, please jump in. But I'm just letting you know, girl, we haven't. One day we'll sit down and go through his messages, and you will pull your hair out because he was
we've
infuriating.
Done some, I know some of the many extras.
Yeah. He went on a dating site posing as his friend. So he was on like a bunch of dating sites and he was upset because he wasn't getting matches. So he got a photo of his friend and put it on the dating sites and was perplexed because the friend was getting more matches. Now, keeping in mind this client, his profile picture was an extreme close-up with him with a really grumpy look on his face, and he wasn't getting matches. And also just the antagonistic, controlling way that he spoke. No one would have ever matched with him. But the picture was, what was not selling him. The picture he put up of his friend was his friend with a big smile on his face in good lighting, full body picture, looking like an approachable, friendly guy. That's the only difference, really. But, anyway, so this whole weird manipulative
But also,
thing that he
I'm
did.
sorry, that's off your rocker.
It's fucking insane,
Who does
mate.
that?
Straight up insane. If his friend knew, oof.
Oh.
At one point, I had to reschedule a booking, so just a few things had stuffed up. I'd actually double booked the same day, and I messaged him and I said, I've stuffed up. Can we do the Monday instead of the Sunday? And he was like, I feel like I've been shafted for one of your VIPs. You once said I was a VIP. Am I not that to you anymore? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, super controlling and petulant. If I had to reschedule, it was, darling, the disappointment I feel inside. Super dramatic. He was the one I've mentioned in a previous podcast that he cleaned my car for me at some point, and I'd left a piece of paper in there, and he accidentally read my name, which I just don't think you I think, so, but no, I guarantee you that's the sort of thing you would have unfolded and went looking for.
Not with all the other things
the other
about
red
him.
flags, yeah. He insisted on paying in advance via bank deposit. This was before Beamit, so, then, not to mention the money. So he could, this is a quote, I want to pretend it isn't a factor in our relationship. He wanted our bookings to be late at night, only in dark, so he could help his, quote, pretense was the word he used. I wanted to help me with our pretense. Then obviously, which is why I was often cancelling, is because I'm fucking exhausted by the time I would go. Obviously now I have firmer boundaries. I finish work at 9 p.m. Maybe I'll run a little overtime if I'm already in a booking with somebody I'm really enjoying. But
What did he mean by pretense?
Well, he wanted to pretend like I was his girlfriend arriving at night, and I don't fucking know.
But you can have a relationship with someone and see them during
in the day. Oh, who knows?
What?
This dude was batshit crazy, babe. Like crazy. He'd light all these candles, and then he'd message me going, "You don't even like the candles, do you? I can tell you don't like the candles." He'd put on music and be like, "Oh, this is this artist from the 70s that's really good with this," and I was like, "It's not my sort of music. Sorry, I'm more of an 80s fan, and 80s Aussie rock." No. What a loser. Me. Him as well. But anyway, so he'd play music.
No,
and I'd
you
be
both
like,
are. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. We'd play music and I'd be like, "Oh, it's not really for me." And he's like, "Oh, you know how you think all of my music is so awful. Oh, I can't ever do anything right. I put this music on and it was this..." I can't believe I saw him for so long. Anyway, it's I've got so many more notes here, but that'll do. Basically, it got to the point where I said I didn't want to see him anymore, and he persisted in sending me messages from different platforms, sending things to my house. I don't know how many times I had to tell him to leave me alone, but he would not stop, and obviously that was quite upsetting. And I had to go to extreme lengths to stop that from happening. And that's really fucking disappointing. But I mean, all these red flags, a lot of people probably listen and they go, "Oh God, what a nutcase. Why'd you keep seeing him?" Like I said, I mean, when these things happen over time and you sort of write things off as people's, as their eccentricities and, or their little character flaws and you don't see it all as a big picture like this.
Yeah.
I just thought of another one.
It isn't presented to you in a list in this way.
No, not like this. And then you realise.
No way.
So yeah, obviously, I mean, I should have stopped seeing him long before. He was awful. But another thing I've just remembered, he sent me a spreadsheet once that he had listed all of the dates of our bookings and how much he'd spent, including little notations for how much he'd spent on each, because sometimes he'd give me like a little $50 gift card for groceries or whatever as well. And he asked me to confirm the dates and the amounts on all of those so he could keep track of his spending and stuff. And it's just so crass. It's just so yuck. Like, don't send your hooker a spreadsheet of how much you spent on her and ask her to confirm. Like, it was ill. Anyway.
I don't know what it sounds like he was trying to get you to see how much money he had spent on you.
Almost certainly, yes. A lot of what he did as isolated incidents you could explain as a normal sort of a quirky thing.
Oh, that's not normal. I'm not saying that was normal.
No. But I'm saying a lot of these things could be seen as maybe a normal or a quirky thing at worst, but combined, you can see a pattern of somebody who is incredibly manipulative and controlling. And and this isn't even half of it. Like I could do a whole episode on this person, but yeah, they Whew, crazy.
And we like crazy people. Like nothing against crazy people.
Bad crazy. Yeah.
Okay, my final one is, I'd say it's the same. It's the worst I've had that wasn't a clear-cut criminal. That didn't black and white commit a crime, but I'd argue they did. And I'm sure other people will. I don't know. We'll see. So this was not very long ago, and I think the client had booked 1 hour. It was my first time seeing them. And when it got to 1:45, the time being up, they were sort of getting close to having an orgasm. And he said, no, not yet. And I was like, I mean, okay, like, but it's going to have to be soon, you know. We don't have that much time left. And then so we sort of kept going, kept doing different things. And it got to almost the time of the booking being finished. It was like 1 or 2 minutes to. So I stopped doing like sexual activity and just like laid down for a quick little cuddle. And then after a couple of minutes, so it was a few minutes after the end of the booking time, I said, okay, did you want to grab a shower? And, you know, really that should have happened before the booking time had ended, but the timing got a bit out of my control. He didn't come at an appropriate time, and then so I kind of kept going. It went a bit over. I didn't have anyone immediately after. So a few minutes after, I said, do you want to have a shower now? And he said, oh, but I haven't, and he wouldn't finish that sentence. Of course, I knew exactly what he was trying to say, but I was not going to finish his sentence for him because I just refused to. And I said, what? And he said, I haven't, I haven't. I said, what? You haven't what? I don't know what you're saying. Totally playing dumb, of course. And he said, I haven't come yet. And I said, oh, yeah, I know, but we're over time. And he goes, well, I'll be quick. And I thought, well, you've just spent 60 minutes not being quick, so I've got no fucking reason to think that, you know, that would be the case.
100%.
And in that moment, I said, okay, and laid back down. Because the thing is, like for me, at that point, I was like, right, you obviously really want to do this. I'm just going to, you can jerk yourself off. If you need to hire my space for a few fucking minutes to jerk yourself off, fine. I'll just lay here and wait till it's over. And even that, like I could have said, no, you need to get up and go. I absolutely could have. Some would argue I should have. But I was like, whatever. It's that same thing we've discussed this whole time. I was like, just let it happen. So he starts like jerking himself off. Then he grabs my head and pushes it down to start giving him oral. And the thing is, like, Holly and I are similar. Both of us will often go a little bit over time, particularly if we've got no one immediately afterwards, if we don't have anything on. In my case, if my husband isn't waiting around the corner busting to pee or, you know, just coming home from work or something, then I often am happy to go a bit over time, a little bit, particularly if I'm having good chats. I'm not going over time doing sex things.
Yes.
Unless I really, really want to, right?
Yeah, no,
like
I feel the same. Yeah.
That's not.
If we're having
that's
a chat,
not okay.
fine.
Having a chat, no worries. Even a cuddle, maybe if I'm really enjoying the cuddles, you know.
Yeah.
But for me, once that clock ticks over, the 60 minutes is up. I'm not interested in having sex anymore, and you know, I made that really clear. And I sort of went with it, like put my head down and then pulled back and stopped and sat there and was quite like, I think made it very clear that I was disengaging from what was happening. And then he did it again and pushed my head back down, and I, you know, accepted what was happening. And this is where the gray area is, right? And this is where, again, this could be a whole other conversation. It's unclear because I did do what was asked of me, but I believe that I made it very clear I was not interested in doing that. I made it clear that the time was up. What I had agreed to was 60 minutes together, and that's what I was being paid for. Anyway, he finished. It was about 1:15 by that point. And then I said, all right, I'm going to have to kick you out now. And he said, oh, can I have a quick shower? And I was like, fucking hell. I mean, I was fucking ropeable at this point. I said, well, it has to be very quick. And he said, yeah, sorry about that. Oh, sorry. And goes and gets in the shower. Anyway, he ends up leaving at about 20 past. And as he's walking out the door, he says, oh, you're amazing. You're my favorite girl I've ever seen. I get paid fortnightly or something, so I won't be able to come next week, but I'll be out, you know. And I'm sitting here being like, there's no way you're ever coming in contact with me again. Because this is what the reason I wanted to talk about this. I know it's hard to talk about, but similarly to what you said before, like I didn't feel traumatized by it, but I did feel in that moment, I felt really fucking violated. And it's my view that he raped me because I clearly didn't consent to what was happening, and he forced me to do it anyway. But the reason I think this is worth talking about is because there's absolutely no way he thought that that's what happened. And there will be some of our listeners who think that I should have spoken to him and told him what had happened and been clearer about that, because, you know, he may go on to do that to other people. And I hear that, but I also don't think that as a victim in a situation, it's my responsibility to educate. I think it's my responsibility to get that person out of my fucking life and never have to deal with them again.
Well, it's that whole thing that people say, as a society, why are we teaching our daughters that they have to they have to avoid being sexually assaulted. Instead, we should be teaching our sons not to sexually assault. And so, you know, before you sort of do the whole, well, you should, maybe let's have a look at where the real issue lies. It's with him thinking that that's appropriate.
Yeah. And sure, I could have done those things. I chose not to. I have no regrets about that.
Yeah.
I don't have any regrets about any of my actions in that scenario. Yeah. But the fact that that man is walking around right now, probably fucking hashtagging not all men, you know, that is what really, really upsets me. And that's what I just wanted some of our listeners to hear. I know a lot of our listeners don't need to hear it because they've had experiences just like that. And as I said, I don't feel, you know, I don't want people to have empathy for me in that situation, whatever. Or you can have empathy, but I don't want condolences. I don't, you know.
Yeah, sure.
I don't have any unresolved
You don't want pity.
issues with it. I don't want pity. Fuck no. But I just want people to understand that it's really just not as clear cut as people seem to think.
Yes.
So we did have some shit people say and some stuff lined up, but instead we just ranted and raved for way too long.
It's a big, heavy episode.
It's a heavy one. Kind of unintentionally heavy, maybe. I don't know.
I think it's a healthy heavy. I think these are things that need to be talked about. As you said, I think it's people just don't realise that they think, boundary pushing, it's just pushing a boundary. Well, sometimes boundary pushing means that you push a boundary and assault somebody. And I think those are really important things to educate people about.
Yeah.
You know, as victims or as potential perpetrators, you might not think that you're a perpetrator. And that's, you know, you're probably not. If you're one of our listeners, you're probably a freaking legend. But, just being aware of how fine those lines are is very sensible.
But, yeah, and I think that for any of us, any person, regardless of gender, to think categorically, I have never done wrong by somebody, I've never pushed a boundary, I've never taken abusive action, I think that's really dangerous, you know, and I think it's this really fine line because we don't want our listeners, again, going, oh, my God, it's me, I'm the worst person ever, I've done all the wrong things. But you're not the people we're concerned about. I've encountered a number of people, particularly through my work, who have been really really strong on the idea that, well, I've never done anything wrong by people. And I just think, I mean, fuck, maybe you're a way better person than I am, but I can't say that. And I can't say that. I certainly can't say that, especially not my younger self.
No.
You know, when I was in my early 20s and teens, I absolutely did things that weren't great. And I'm sure I continue to do them and maybe can't see them yet. And, you know, and that's okay. We need to keep doing better. But just this idea of, oh, well, I've never raped a woman, or I've never, you know, done something someone didn't want in the bedroom, or, you know, it's like, well, you just, I just feel like that's a big call to make.
Hopefully we grow, as you said, and we learn and we improve on those things.
Yeah. And my final note is no answer is an answer. Because my strategy, as I've made clear today, is that I simply ignore you if you fucked me over.
I'll turn around and scream at you. That's okay. But yes,
Holly will scream at you, Jenna will ignore you, and both of those are very clear answers.
Yes, exactly. It's exactly. They're both as strong as each other. Yeah. I think it's both a very clear response. We'd like to thank our sexiest patrons, the best patrons that have ever existed, the patrons that keep us growing and thriving and buying groceries. We love you. Thank you to our new generous somebody, Curtis, our even more generous somebodies, Lachlan, Timmy, Steve, our footstool, my footstool, James E., Scott C., our secret admirer, Andrew, Adam Smith, Leslie, Ellen, Sub London,
Scott Watson, Miss Billy, Nora Knightley, Wheezy, Fritz Your Tits, Mr. E, Brandon, Simon, Alfie, Greenie, Ophelia Parker, Aaron, and Nomad. And our extremely generous somebodies who are Aaron, Pete, Andrew, Sienna Saint, Brino, Adam Moore, Wombat, Josh, and Sergio. And he is your footstool, but I've been allowed to borrow him on occasion. Oh, yeah. I'd just like to clarify that.
We're a very sharing little polycule, aren't we?
Sharing is caring. Absolutely. Yeah. So on that, I hope anyone who's feeling a bit shit and a bit dark at the end of that episode, do reach out to somebody if you're not feeling great. If you're somebody who knows Holly or I, you can reach out to us.
Fucking hell.
Maybe not.
No, I don't feel bad for us. I don't want anyone to listen and go, oh God, poor Holly and Jenna, they've been so abused. No, like we wouldn't be in this job if it weren't for the many, many massive majority of wonderful clients that we have who treat us wonderfully and who respect us. So we are very, very privileged, very loved and taken care of, and we are both supported by very loving communities and loving people, families,
and each other.
And each other. Yeah, that's what I mean. And
also I think there's we often talk about the huge disparity between the clients that are bad. They just have no idea how freaking amazing the good clients are.
Yeah.
It's not just there's a baseline and they've fallen below it. There's a massive gap.
Big gap. Yeah. So these are the extremes. So, we love you guys. We love our jobs. We love each other. We love our bread and butter.
Yes. I'm so glad you went there. What a sign off. Mwah. Bye. Please look out for us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Patreon. Our name everywhere is Somebody You Pod, as in podcast. Our Patreon starts at just $3 a month, and you can get all of our episodes ad-free and a day early, plus bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes action, bloopers, and more. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the voices of sex workers. And remember, somebody you love might just be a sex worker.